ACM Tech Talk. This webcast is part of ACM's commitment to lifelong learning and professional development, serving a global membership of computing professionals and students. I'm Jan Timanovsky, ACM Education and Professional Development Manager. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with ACM and what it has to offer, ACM offers educational and professional development resources that bolster your skills and enhance career opportunities. You can see some of the highlights on your screen. ACM provides access to the ACM Digital Library, the world's most comprehensive database of computing literature, leading publications and global conferences that draw top experts in a broad spectrum of computing topics, support for education and research, including curriculum development, teacher training, and the ACM Turing and ACM Prize in Computing Awards, among many others. And the ACM Code of Ethics, a collection of principles and guidelines designed to help computing professionals make ethically responsible decisions in professional practice. So before we get started, we'd like to quickly mention a few housekeeping items shown on the slide in front of you. If you have questions at any time, please type them in using Zoom's Q&A button. I'll say just for today's event, we encourage folks to hold off the questions a little bit toward the end when Barbara and Laura will be able to take a look. So maybe take some extra time to think about your questions today and type them in closer to the Q&A. Laura and Barbara will answer them at the end. This session is being recorded and will be archived. You'll receive an email notification when it becomes available. And check learning.acm.org for updates on this and other upcoming webcasts. At the end of the presentation, you'll see a survey open up on your screen. Please take a minute to fill it out and help us improve our Tech Talks. We really do pay attention to those. So today's presentation is Translating Interview Speak, What Your Interviewer Really Wants to Know by Barbara Limmer and Laura Browne. Barbara Limmer is a professional career coach and consultant who has personally coached thousands of professionals and executives from around the world. She brings extensive experience working in all sides of the hiring process, including career management, human resources, and executive search. She previously worked with MBA students and alumni as a career management director at Thunderbird School of Global Management and in a variety of human resource roles focused on recruiting, training, and employee relations for companies including Bank of America and MetLife. Laura Browne has extensive experience in a leadership and management development. She was a senior director of human resources for a global tech company where she taught managers how to be better interviewers. She's a speaker, trainer, and coach who helps global leaders and individuals be more successful. At career coffee breaks, she shows clients how to get promoted and make more money at work by negotiating raises and higher starting salaries at new jobs. Laura is the author of 3 business books and 2 fiction books, including Help, My Company Swiped Left, Increase Your Income, 7 Rules for Women Who Want to Make More Money at Work, and A Salary Cinderella Story, or How to Make Money Without a Fairy Godmother. Barbara and Laura are co-authors of the recently published Interview Speak, What Your Interviewer Really Wants to Know from Manning Publications. Barbara and Laura, without further ado, take it away.
That sounds great. Okay, let me go ahead and share my information. Thank you so much for that start. We really appreciate it. We're so excited to be here to share this information. Let me just jump over because this is something that is near and dear to our hearts and also something that we're certainly hearing a lot of people right now are asking, what do I do? How do I really make the most of my interview if I do get an interview because it's so difficult right now? So we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about interview preparation. We're going to cover common questions because there are some typical questions that you should get used to answering. And then we're going to talk about how to avoid mistakes. And thank you so much for mentioning the questions. We want to answer questions, and we'll have a little time to do that at the end. So Jan already introduced us. Here's our book, Interview Speak, What Your Interviewer Really Wants to Know. So let's first start off with what makes interview questions so hard? Well, if you're thinking about interviews, you're probably already stressed. This is a stressful situation with limited time. You have half an hour, you have an hour. You have to make the most of it. And that's what a lot of times makes it so hard. In addition, each question has a question behind it, what they're really looking for. And that's really why we wrote the book. because most people don't know what the interviewers are really looking for. And so we want to help people translate what the interviewers are looking for and answer the real question, not the question they think is being asked. Now, here's a key that we want to tell you. There are no perfect answers. So please don't think that we're going to give you some answers to memorize, because that is not what we do. And I know that there are books out there or speakers out there that say, here are the 100 best answers to give. Absolutely not, because as interviewers, we've heard that BS before. And we know if you're saying that you're memorizing an answer. So instead, we want you to understand the process and give you a formula to help you to really translate it and give the best answers possible. Other things that make this hard is sometimes people who are interviewers think that they're really good at it, but it doesn't mean that you're good on the other side of the desk. And it's funny because I talked to a bunch of HR people yesterday and they sort of laughed at this. And they said, but I think I'm good at it because I ask, I've interviewed other people, but you don't know what these other interviewers are saying. So just because you're a good interviewer doesn't mean that the interviewer you are talking to is going to be interviewing the same way you do. So even if you've interviewed a bunch of people, you still need to look at it with a fresh set of eyes. And it can be hard to know what you're doing because some interviewers have a stone face. And so you think, oh, I'm not doing well because this person isn't smiling at me, when you might be doing great. And on the other hand, I know some interviewers who really, well, they're smiling the whole time because they want to, calm you down. But just because they're smiling doesn't mean that you're doing a good job. So all of these things make it hard. Now, I want to focus on three things. This is super important, that when you are being interviewed, interviewers want to know three things, and a lot of people miss one of these. So first, interviewers want to know, can you do the job? Well, obviously, that's why you're in the interview. They've looked at your resume and they think, okay, this person can do the job. The second one is key, and this is what a lot of people miss. Will you do the job? Does this suit your interests, motivations, and career goals? Do you want to do this job? Are you excited about this job? And you might think, well, that's pretty obvious. I'm sitting in front of the interviewer. Of course, I want this job. They know you want a job and you want to get paid from somebody. But do you want this job? Are you excited about this job? Is this something that's gonna motivate you? And if you can get past those two, they'll want to know, will you fit? Do you have the kind of personality and style that's a match for the team, the department, the company, the customers? Because here's the thing, we don't really think about this, but interviewers are scared. I know we're probably scared if we're interviewed, but interviewers are scared that if they move you forward or if they hire you, you might not do a good job and you might make them look bad. So they're really worried about, can you do the job? Are you motivated? And will you fit? Because they don't want you starting and then being bored, or starting and then quitting because it's going to look bad on them. So keep this in mind, that you've really got to convince the interviewer that you will stay and you will make them look good. So, how do you prepare? Get to know the company, look at their website, their social media. How do they describe their culture and leadership? Because you may want to use those same words or those descriptions and mention them in the interview. Get to know the interviewer, look at their LinkedIn profile, find out a little bit about them. Get to know the job. Analyze and develop possible questions based on the job description. Actually, in the book, what we do is we take a job description and we deconstruct it and we say, if they're looking for this, chances are they're going to have this kind of question, so you can be prepared. Also, you want to know yourself and identify relevant and compelling stories. So think about a number of stories that you can pull out of your pocket when you're asked in the interview. And obviously prepare for common questions. And that's one of the things we're going to do today. We're going to give you some common questions that you absolutely need to be prepared for. So Barbara,
Thank you,
take it
Laura.
over. You're welcome.
Thank you. So before we get into the specific questions and the translations of those questions, let's talk about different kinds of questions. So first, I want to introduce you to the concept of breadth versus depth. Breadth means they're interested in the breadth of your experience rather than one specific example. So those questions sound sort of like this. Describe your experience in X. So again, if you're diving deep and only giving one example, then you're underselling yourself and the breadth of your experience. On the other hand, depth means go deep by giving a specific example. So those start with something like, Give me an example of, tell me about a time when, talk to me about a situation when this happened. And there you're not going general, you're staying specific in that particular circumstance. And by the way, that's also known as behavioral interviewing or competency-based interviewing. You might have heard of that before. Some interviewers, rather than saying, give me an example of, might ask hypothetical questions. And that sounds like, how would you handle this kind of situation? Or they might ask a general question. How do you handle this? How do you typically handle this kind of situation? Here's my message to you. If you are asked hypothetical or general, convert and give a concrete example, which will always have more impact. So, how you convert that would sound something like this. So, how would you handle this situation? You know, I've actually handled that a number of times. Let me tell you about one of them. Or a general question, how do you typically handle this? You know what? That just happened to me a couple weeks ago. I think the best way for me to answer that for you would be for me to walk you through that particular example. Next. So, how do you talk through your examples or your stories without rambling on and on? I want to give you some possible frameworks. These are the most common. PAR stands for problem, action, result. I typically advise entry level or new college grads to use this framework because it's very simple. The most common is STAR, situation, task, action, result. So here was the situation, here was the task I was given, here's what I did, and here was the result. That framework has been around for over 40 years. It is the most common. By the way, it's what Amazon uses, and they make it very public that they like that framework. My favorite, on the other hand, is SOAR, which is situation, obstacle, action, result. And let's dive deeper into that next. Okay, so SOAR. The reason I like this is because you're not just giving the situation. Let's say the question was, describe a problem that you had. So the situation is, at my last company, there was a problem with X. It was a problem because of Y, and here's what made it difficult. That's Z. And the reason why that is so powerful is because you're allowing your interviewer to really feel the pain of what you had to go through. And it's like you're putting them in a state of suspense. Oh my goodness, what did you do? And then you go into the actions I took were A, B, and C. And of course, never forget the result, quantified whenever possible. Next.
Huh. Hold on.
Uh-oh. Next slide.
There.
Okay, so next let's talk about tips and traps to avoid. These are things I've heard a lot from clients in a variety of fields. So these tips and traps apply to any kind of question, really. And the first thing is what I call weakening words and phrases. And these are when you're trying to be humble and you say, I try to do this, I try to do that, I'm pretty good at this, I'm pretty good at that. You know what? That weakens your message. Don't just say you try, say what you do. Don't say you're pretty good at. Say, one of my strengths is this. I'm very good at this. Try to avoid filler words such as and ah or I mean, if you need to pause, it's okay. It's better to take a few seconds of silence as you're trying to gather your thoughts than clutter your answer with those filler words. Another trap to avoid is giving generic answers. We talk about, and I'll show you an example later on, looking at a job description and preparing your answers that are relevant to that job and that company. So don't just give generic answers for every interview you go on. We often get asked, how long should my answers be? The answer is 1 to 2 minutes. Anything less than 1 minute really isn't going to include enough substance to have impact. Anything more than 2 minutes, you're going to lose your interviewer and their mind is going to start wandering and they're going to stop listening. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's another concept for you. Because negative questions have become extremely common, and we're actually going to talk about those later today. So I believe employers ask negative questions like, what are your weaknesses? Tell me about a failure. In my opinion, they are not asking that to trick you. They're asking it because they're so tired of the BS canned answers that they're trying to get to know the real you. So that's when you use the negative sandwich anytime you're asked anything negative, which, by the way, could include, why are you looking for a job? Or why did you leave your last job? So, what we mean by negative sandwich is you start on the positive, you go into the negative, and you end on a positive. Something like this: I'm really proud of my ability to do this. However, one time you go into the negative and then you circle back to the positive. I learned an important lesson, and now what I do is this. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's another problem I've seen a lot. I versus we is what I call it. And in the corporate world, there's no I in team. We're very used to starting every sentence with we, we. Well, guess what? We are not in the interview. And if you begin every sentence with we, then I'm not going to know what I'm getting by hiring you personally. So get comfortable saying I. Use both, but be intentional. If you personally did the work, say I. Don't say we gave a presentation if you were the only one giving the presentation. And by the way, if you were part of a team, that's okay too. Definitely use the word we, but define the I first. I led the team, and together we did this, we did that. Or I represented my department on the X team, and we did all sorts of great things. Don't overuse either, because again, if every word out of your mouth is we, I'm not going to know what your personal role was. And if every pronoun you use is I might conclude you're not a team player.
Thank you, Barbara. So that was the interview preparation. Now let's talk about some common interview questions that you really need to be prepared for. Now, in the book, we try to make it sort of easy or a little bit fun because we know that interviewing is not fun. So we actually have some cartoons in there. We also do sentence diagrams where we pull apart things and really explain it. So here's one of our cartoons. This is next applicant, please. So on the left-hand side, what the interviewer says, tell me about yourself. Now, here's what they think. So the candidate is thinking, they want to know all about me. I'll start with elementary school. And the interviewer is thinking, please don't ramble. I don't need to hear your life story. Now, I got to tell you, early in my career, I messed this up. So I remember thinking, oh, they want me to go through my resume and say, I worked at this job, I worked at that job, I worked at this job. Absolutely not. Let me translate this. When they say, tell me about yourself, they're saying, I want to get to know you a little bit and give you an opportunity to share what you want me to know. They want to know, are there any red flags in what you say? They also want to know, are you prepared? And here's the key, that it goes back to, do you want this job? Because if you don't show that you're prepared, they're going to think, oh, you really don't want this job. If you had wanted this job, you would have prepared, you would have been ready to answer things like this. Also, do you get to the point or do you ramble, which is what Barbara just talked about? So here's the answer, and this will probably surprise you. You should only take 30 to 60 seconds. This should not be a 5-minute thing. And I know plenty of people that go on and on and on. And again, the interviewer is making up, they're just, you've lost them. They're thinking about, what do I need to make for dinner or whatever. So keep it short. Now, if they want more information, they'll ask you. What you need to do is thank them and say something brief to build rapport, like something that connects you to them or the company or job. You could say, hey, I noticed that you live in New York. I used to live in New York, or something. Now, you may already have done that in the first couple of minutes of the interview when you're saying hi, but if you haven't, think about, is there a way to connect with them? And then what you need to do is name a few of your skills that relate to this position, and then describe one or two accomplishments you're really proud of that directly relate to this position. Again, I'm emphasizing you're really trying to give them the message, I will be great here. And then end up with, again, say why you're interested in the company and this specific job. So that's a way to wrap it up. Let's talk about another one that Barbara mentioned. Why are you looking for a job? Now, they ask this a lot of times. They really want to find out what's going on here. So the translation is, are there any red flags in your past, such as performance or personality issues? Are you going to badmouth your last employer or manager? Because if you say something bad about them, chances are you're not going to last here and you're going to say something bad about us. So you never want to do that. So what do? You use the negative sandwich model. Start with a positive about the current or your last job. I enjoyed the job, I enjoyed the people, the company, or I felt pride in what I accomplished there. Then give a little negative, give the business reason for leaving or looking to leave. There have been cost cutting measures. There is a reorg. I mean, we're hearing that all the time right now, or a merger. Or maybe just say, based on the structure or org chart, there's no room for future growth, so I decide I want to move on. And then end up with positive. Say what you're looking for next. Show excitement and enthusiasm for that next chapter of your career. Say what excites you about this job and company, showing you've done your research. Again, a lot of people get stuck here and go way into the negative. It should be fast and go end on the positive. Go ahead, Barbara. Tell us about this one, which is a tough one.
So this one has become extremely common. Again, what are your weaknesses? And again, this is not supposed to be a trap. They're trying to get to know you. Here's the translation. Are you going to be real, honest, and candid? Or are you going to give me a typical BS answer by doing what a lot of online resources say, oh, disguising a strength as a supposed weakness? The next one, are you someone who has both the confidence and humility to admit that you're not perfect? Will we be able to work around your weaknesses in this job, or are they going to end up causing us all problems? That's what that question really means. Next slide, please. So, before I talk about how to answer it, I want to talk about how not to answer. And I've heard all of these numerous times. Here's what the most common online resource and book says to say. Oh, I give every effort 110%, and I get really frustrated by others who don't work as hard as me. Yeah, like I've never heard that before. Sorry, that's not really a weakness. Here's another very common one. Oh, I'm a perfectionist. Yeah, the number one BS answer. In fact, I once had a candidate say that to me, and I'd say, yeah, I've heard that before. Give me a real weakness. And then I really put them on the spot. Recently, here's one that has cropped up. People say, oh, work-life balance is a weakness. I'm trying to work on that. And I hear that and I think to myself, all right, so what you're saying is in your last jobs, you worked really long hours, but now that I'm considering hiring you, you're going to be watching the clock and wanting to leave early every day? No, the time to talk about work-life balance is not in the job interview. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do you answer it? Well, first, I want you to listen to the question. Some people ask for one, what is your greatest weakness? Other people ask for weaknesses, plural. By the way, if they ask for plural, give two, not one. And many people actually say, give me three of your weaknesses. So you've got to be ready for that. Now, for any of the weaknesses you talk about, you have two options to come up with what to say. Number one, go back in time. What didn't come easily to you, or what did you struggle with, and what have you done to improve? Another option, take a strength that under very specific circumstances can be a weakness, and what do you do to compensate for that tendency? Use the negative sandwich model, as we've been talking about, and recognize that self-knowledge makes you a better candidate. And talking through this is actually an opportunity to build rapport, which will allow the interviewer to get to know you and like you. And you know what? If they don't feel like they're getting to know you and they don't like you, they're going to find a reason not to hire you. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's take these examples in a little bit more detail. So going back in time would sound something like this using the negative sandwich model. I'm really proud of my ability to do X, but that wasn't always the case. Earlier in my career, I really struggled with X, or I had a mentor who gave me feedback on X, and here's what I did to work on it, and now what I do is this. We have another example. Next slide, please. So this is the one where you start with a strength. It has the same beginning. I'm really proud of my ability to do X, But under this particular circumstance, that strength is actually a weakness, and here's why. So, what I do in those situations is this. Next slide. Now, this question is often asked in a variety of different ways. That whole word weakness has gotten kind of a bad reputation, so people try to avoid that word. Here are some possible questions. If I were to call your previous boss or colleagues, what would they tell me are your areas of improvement? Or what are you working on to improve yourself? This last one, I actually had a client get asked, if you were to hire a professional coach, what 3 things would you want to work on with them? Those are other ways of asking the good old weakness question. Next slide. Now, here's another negative question that has become incredibly common. Tell me about one of your failures. Here's what that really means. Are you someone who has both the confidence and humility to admit that not everything in your professional life has worked out perfectly? Are you the kind of person who learns from their failures? And most importantly, in what ways are you a better candidate for me now that you've learned some of these important lessons? And again, this question can also be asked in a variety of ways. Next. So, how do you answer this? Tell me about one of your failures. Well, describe a project that didn't work out as well as you had hoped. By the way, it doesn't have to be a flat out failure, it just wasn't as stellar as you had hoped. Explain the context, what you did, the result, and very important, why wasn't the result as stellar as you had hoped? State what you learned from it and what you do differently now. And remember, what you're selling is you're someone who learns from their experiences, you demonstrate resiliency, and guess what? You're going to be an asset to them now that you've gone through that while being paid by somebody else. Next.
Thank you. So let me answer another common question. Why should we hire you? And again, this is, they're really thinking this the whole time. Why should we hire you over somebody else? So the translation is, please summarize the top qualifications you have for the job. What makes you unique over all the other people that we're talking to? And I want to get additional information to help me determine if you're a good fit. This is your chance to sell yourself, your skills, your knowledge, and your experience. Don't assume that they will know this. So you have to be really, really clear. So how to answer? Think about it from their point of view. Again, we're always thinking from our point of view. But what is it that this company, this department, this hiring manager, what would they really want? What's important to them? And then describe the top 3 to 5 skills or experience that make you an ideal fit. And then you want to talk about the unique combination you bring. So I not only have A and B, but I also have C and D. And so the message you're giving them, it would be difficult to find that unusual combination in another candidate. And that's why I say you have to be really clear, because especially if you're talking, let's say, to the HR person or not the hiring manager, that they may not have put that together, that, oh, not everybody has A and B and C and D. So be really clear about this, that I have, the combination that you really need. I am the unicorn you are looking for. So go ahead and make sure that they understand that. Now, another question that gets asked almost at the end of every interviewer, you need to be ready for, and they're going to say, what questions do you have? And it's so interesting because I remember one person said to me, oh, I never ask questions. I don't want them to think that I question. I said, no, you must ask questions at the end. And the translation, when they ask this, is they're wondering, are you interested in learning more? What are you interested in learning more about? Do you want to know about our benefits or our time off? Or are you interested in the job, the team, and the company? And I'm going to tell you right now, I talked to a manager, it was about 2 months ago. She was telling me she was hiring somebody. And I said, so how'd that recent interview go? She said, well, the interview was okay until I asked, what questions do you have? And the candidate said, can you tell me about your time off policy? Absolutely not. She was not moved forward because she thought, you know what, that's all she cares about. All she cares about is the time off. Now, are you going to ask about that? Sure. But at the end of the interview process, and especially after you've gotten the job offer. But if you ask too early, they're going to think, oh, this person isn't interested in this job. They're just interested in a paycheck. So what you want to do is be ready. So always have questions prepared to show your research, the company, and you're interested in the job. Now, the questions you ask should be based on who you're talking to. So if you're talking to HR and recruiting, so again, they don't know the details of the job, you want to ask them some basic things like, how would you describe the company culture? Or what are the common characteristics of people who are successful at this company? Or my favorite question of all, what do you enjoy most about working here? And it's funny, I talked to somebody who had just gone on a job interview. She asked this question. She said, Laura, the HR person got a big smile on her face and she opened up. She loved her job and she loved what she was doing. She loved the company. And this was this great moment where we connected because she was telling me, oh, this is a really fun place to work and it's wonderful. So that's a great question to ask. Now, if you're talking to the hiring manager, here are some questions you could ask. What will be my top priorities? What are the successes that the team is proud of? Tell me about the customers I'd be interacting with and what their expectations would be. So again, you're looking to see, what will I be doing? How can I be successful? How can I help the company be successful? This is also a place where you can bring in your research. So you could say, hey, I noticed on the company website, or I've noticed in the recent media information that the company is expanding to Europe. Can you tell me about that? I have a lot of experience working in Europe, and I'm very interested. So again, you're telling them, I'm interested, I'm prepared, and I have these extra talents that I might not have mentioned before. So make sure that you make the best use of this part. Now let's go ahead to the next part, which is avoiding mistakes. And I hope you're getting the message that one of the big mistakes is not being prepared, and you have to be prepared. And it's so funny because I've talked to people who have said, I don't prepare. I just want to show up and wing it and be my authentic self. And I get that. But my answer is always, be your authentic self and be prepared. Because you don't want to have an interview and afterwards go, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, or oh, I wish I had said that. No, preparation will help you to not feel bad after an interview. So again, be ready for common questions. Don't memorize answers, but just be prepared. Don't assume being an interview will make you a good interviewee, because every interviewer is different. Practice your answers to difficult or delicate questions. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and he said, look, I've been in my company for 7 months, and I need to move on, but I'm concerned about that question. So I said, that's the question you really need to be prepared for. So I said, don't just write down an answer. Actually say it. Record yourself. So, and I know that this is hard, but record yourself so you can hear how you sound answering the question, or ask a friend of yours to go ahead and practice with you. But whatever it is, when you get that tough question, you need to be ready. Plan questions to ask the interviewer and get there early. Whether it's online, test out the tech, make sure that you're fine with it, or map directions. And I messed this up early in my career. Again, I had a lot of messes. Okay, this is way before, excuse me, way before Google Maps. I showed up late for an interview because I looked at a map, and actually there was an accident on the highway. So I was 10 minutes late. Fortunately, the interviewer was super nice. They hired me anyway, but that does not always happen. So make sure you get there early.
So here's another very common mistake. We actually have a whole chapter in our book called Not Hearing the Question, the Whole Question, and the Heart of the Question. Let the interviewer finish their entire question before you begin to plan your answer. Don't just focus on the start of the question. One of the questions I used to ask people sounded something like this. Describe for me a complex, long-term, difficult project you were involved in from start to finish that involved collaborating with other departments. And I'd get people talk about these glorious projects from start to finish, great results. And at the end, I'd say, you didn't really answer my question. Why? Because the heart of the question came at the end. I wanted to hear about collaborating with other departments. So after they finish their question, it's okay to take a brief pause, let your brain spin, and don't just give the first example that comes to mind. Pick your best story and example. Don't ramble as you try to come up with an answer, because then that makes your brain less efficient at thinking. Pause. It's okay to say, I haven't been asked that before. Let me think about that. You can't say that with the tell me about yourself or why are you interested in this job question, but you certainly can if asked for a particular example. If the interviewer interrupts you as you're talking, see it as a gift because they're giving you an opportunity to correct your answer and to hear what they're really looking for. Next. Okay, giving answers that sound good to you but are not. That's a pretty common mistake. So if you're too long and rambling, or as we said earlier, or too short and not enough substance. If in your example you're focusing just on what you did rather than how you did it and why it mattered, you're missing an opportunity for impact. Not giving answers that relate to the job, company, or industry. That's why preparation is key because, again, the first answer you come up with might be the best one in your career, but if it doesn't relate to this job or company or industry, it's not going to be as effective as one that does. Overusing we and underusing I, as we spoke about earlier, and giving general answers instead of a past example. This used to happen to me when I asked people, so give me an example of a time when you did this. And they would say, oh, I always do this, this, and this. Or that happens a lot. Here's how I handle it. And I think to myself, that's not giving me a real example. Don't go general. If they want a specific example, give them one. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about using the job description to identify possible questions. We go into a lot more detail on this in our book, but here's an example. If the job description includes as one of the responsibilities, by the way, don't just focus in on the qualifications part of the job description, look at every single sentence in the responsibilities. So this job description said, present a positive, professional, and high energy approach to clients and team members. Note the words I have in bold. Those could be asked about in an interview. So next slide, please. Here are possible interview questions. In what ways have you displayed a positive, professional, and high energy approach in your previous positions? Give a personal example of displaying a positive, professional, and high energy approach when interacting with a customer or potential customer. If you get asked a question like that, after having that bullet point on a job description, it should not come as a surprise. Next slide. Now, be prepared for different interview stages and mindsets. We're not going to be able to talk about all of these, but you can see on the slide, look at all the different stages and people that could be involved in your interview. Let's talk about the two most common. Next slide. We're going to talk about HR talent acquisition next. Here we are. Okay, so first of all, HR or talent acquisition may be the very first screening, or it could be a subsequent interview. Don't assume that, oh, it's a talent acquisition rep. They're just going to ask me basic questions like, tell me about yourself and why are you in the job market? Guess what? Those HR people are typically the ones that have gone through the most training on how to interview people. So they might ask more detailed, thorough questions. Their mindset is not just do you qualify, but is this a match for your goals? Are you a fit? Remember those three things that Laura talked about earlier. And typically, HR is going to refer you on to someone else. So, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, how are you going to make me look if I recommend you? Now, the next common stage is the hiring manager. Again, they might be the first interview or they might come later in the process. They're likely going to ask more detailed questions on what you've done and how, what results you've achieved, and how you've added value to the team, the department, the company. Their mindset is not just will you be successful in the position, but how easy to train and manage are you going to be? Are you going to have a very steep learning curve? Are you going to need a lot of hand holding? In other words, are you going to be making my job easier or harder? And of course, why should I hire you of all of the candidates I could be talking to?
Now, when you get finished with this, don't forget to do certain things. Find out about the next steps and timeframes, and make sure that you close the sale. So, at the end of the interview, you want to reinforce your interest and the enthusiasm about the job. Again, remind them you really want this job, and briefly summarize why you're a great fit for this role or organization. So, it might be that you say, I'm excited about this job. I feel I'm a great fit because of X, Y, and Z, as we've discussed. I really look forward to continuing the conversation in the next stage of your selection process. And then you can go ahead and ask, so what are our next steps and timeframes? And because it may be that you're just at the beginning, you just want to get an idea. And make sure that you smile and thank them for their time. Don't forget to get the names and contact information from all interviewers, because you want to send thank you messages. Obviously, we don't handwrite thank you notes anymore, but you want to send an email message. And the email messages should say something that you appreciate their time, and reinforce why you're excited and feel that you're a great fit for this role. And so don't just say, thank you so much, it was great to meet with you. You can either reiterate what you already said, as I said in the meeting, blah, 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 and then, or you can say, I'm also reminded, or I also want to let you know, and you can add some additional information if you realized, oh my gosh, I forgot to say it. Make sure that you put it in that, because you want to make sure that you give them as much information as possible to make sure that they will see that you are the best candidate. So again, I want to remind you, prepare, prepare, prepare. Preparation leads to less stressful and better interviews. And as I said, be prepared and be authentic, develop your best answer, and then continue learning. So we always say after after an interview, go ahead and think about, what did I do well? And I know we always beat ourselves up, but always ask yourself, what did I do well? What do I want to continue to do? And then ask yourself, if I could do it over again, what would I do differently? What would I add? What would I take away? So it's important to sort of do that afterwards so you're ready for the next one. So I want to thank you. We're going to open up the questions in just a minute. On the left-hand side is Interview Speak, and our wonderful publisher Manning is giving a 40% discount if you go to their website and use the code Interview Help. If you want to contact us, here's Barbara Limmer's LinkedIn. Go ahead and connect with her. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Go ahead and let us know that you were at this meeting today. We'd love to connect with you. You can go to my website, careercoffeebreak.com, where I've got information about my other books and also my online training classes on how to get a salary increase or how to negotiate a higher salary at your next job. So what I want to do is I'm going to stop and we're going to go to the questions and start to answer those. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. So I'm going to start pulling out some of these questions again. We're not going to get to all of these, and there were some really great questions on here. Hold on, let me pull this up. Okay, so one of the questions, by the way, we saw that somebody asked, what does BS mean? So sorry about that.
That was my fault.
That's okay. Somebody was kind enough to point out BS means, it's something negative, so you don't want to have that sort of answer. Okay, hold on. Let me go back to the start questions. So somebody said, Barbara, I'm gonna ask you, how can an accomplished professional avoid overwhelming the interview and appearing overqualified without downplaying their skills and experience? What's the golden mean from your extensive experience? So what do you think about that?
A lot of people worry about that. Like, why is my being overqualified a reason to not hire me? Well, remember what Laura said? It's not just will you fit, it's do you want this job? Are you going to make me have to replace you later? So, if you feel you're overqualified, you have to have a story behind why you're interested in this particular job. You could focus on what are the work activities involved in this job that you love? What gets you up in the morning? You could say something like, my last job involved this, this, and this, but that was a small portion of the job. That was the part that I loved the most. And the reason I'm so interested in your job is because it would allow me to really focus in on those things. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. Are there, wait, hold on. I realize if I realize I made a mistake through explaining an answer, what's the best way to recover gracefully? And I think, Barbara, you can answer that one also.
You know what? It's okay to be human. Remember, we said it was important to build rapport with the interviewer? We all know that people get nervous during their job interviews. So you could say something like, I'm sorry, I got off track. Let me start over again. Or wait, I remember you were asking me about this. Sorry, I got off track. Let me focus in on this. It's okay. You're human. They will appreciate your correcting yourself as opposed to ramble, 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 and then you're not giving them what they want and you're going to kick yourself later.
Hmm.
Main message, it's okay.
It's okay. We are human, and sometimes I've had interviews where actually I had somebody sort of start laughing. I'm like, look, I'm really sorry. I'm so nervous here, and I appreciated that. And she said, can I start again? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and do it. And actually, then the interview went really well because the fact is that people are nervous, and most interviewers, most, not all, will give you that grace, especially if you say something. So this is so again, we can't go through all these. How much does this vary around the world, and what's key to adapt to, where the company is from, or where the interview is from, or something else? So I'm going to comment on it first, Barbara, because I
Mhm.
have done training and coaching all around the world, and so obviously you want to make sure if you're applying for a job at a company in a different country, you want to be aware of that. I really also want to focus on the interviewer because I need to impress that person that is in front of me right now. So, yeah, you want to make sure you understand that, this company is in Ireland or whatever, but find out more about that person because that's the person I need to get past. So, do you have anything else, Barbara, you would say?
And yes, so do your homework on that person. LinkedIn is a great tool. Look them up. It's okay if they see that you've looked them up. And if you're unfamiliar with their culture, do some research and think about modifying your own if your background is different. Um, Show up to the interview armed and ready that there might be some cultural differences and you understand that.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody asked, why is it so uncommon to get feedback when you're not selected? Many times I'm not selected, I have no clue. And let me mention that first. So the fact is, and I can talk from the US perspective, that they are not going to give you feedback because that could cause problems for them, either liability problems or you could say bad things about them online. So chances are you will never hear, even if you ask nicely, you will never hear why you didn't get it. Now, you can try and you can ask, but here's the point I want to make for you. You are not going to get a bunch of jobs, okay? And most of the time it has nothing to do with you. It could be that the president of the company just had his brother-in-law apply for their, I mean, who knows. And so to me the point is you do your best and then you move on and you keep going and recognize in most cases it had nothing to do with you. Barbara, did you have anything else
Right.
there?
Well, one thing I suggest is make sure the question you ask is not putting them on the defensive or making their ears perk up and fear of getting sued, let's say, which is very common in the US, unfortunately. So instead of saying, why wasn't I hired? Say, I'm trying to improve my interview skills. What feedback can you offer to me so that I can improve?
Thank you. Um, Somebody said we don't always fit all the specific job requirements. If asked about one requirement that I don't fulfill, how do I answer that?
Can I take that one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please do that. Yeah.
Um, Again, this is why preparation is so crucial because if you see something on the job description that you don't have, you've got to be ready. How am I going to answer that? Here's what you should do. Come up with anything similar in your background. So maybe you haven't done that exact thing, but you've interacted with that kind of customer or you've solved a similar problem and if they ask you in the interview, so do you have experience in this? You could say, well, I haven't actually done that exact thing, but here's what I have done. They will appreciate your confidence and humility and admitting again that you're not perfect, but selling what you do have rather than apologizing for what you lack.
Now, I'm going to add on another question to that that's sort of that's connected. What's the best way to respond when I don't know an answer, but I still want to leave a strong impression?
Don't know an answer. Well, so again, if it's something on the job description, you've got to be prepared. There's no excuse for that. But we have a section in our book about strange questions you might be asked,
Yes.
like, how many airplanes do you think are in the sky right now? Or if you were a superhero, what would your special power be? And again, they're asking that because they're trying to get to know you and how you think. And if you're asked an unusual question, it's okay to say, wow, I've never been asked that before. Let me think about that and stop and think. And you do have to come up with something. I mean, I've had people say, oh, I can't come up with anything. Can we come back to that? Yes. And then inevitably, I forget to come back to it. And again, it's a missed opportunity. So the point is, if you give yourself time to think, you'd be amazed at what you could come up with. But if you sit there and ramble, 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 you might not come up with anything because you're busy talking and not thinking.
Yeah, and I want to add to that because yeah, I've heard like really crazy questions. And when you get a crazy question that really does not have to do with the job, what they really want to know is they want to know about you. They want to know about your thought process. And so be willing to say, well, here's what I'm thinking. I mean, to take a moment, do whatever Barbara said. Here's what I'm thinking. If I were a superhero, I would want to help other people because helping people is really important to me. So I would be Superman if I were a superhero. Because, by the way, they don't care what superhero you pick. Obviously, don't pick a villain. But they don't care. They just want to know how you are making a decision. And so they're really trying to understand what's going on in your head. So that's how you should answer. Now, I've got a question here about salary, one of my favorite topics, so I'm going to answer it. So, when's a good time to talk about salary? I'd hate to waste my time and energy during multiple interviews. Now, first of all, let me broaden this a little bit. So, a lot of times the question I get is, what happens if they ask about the salary? Now, I'm going to tell you what the interviewer is thinking. If they ask you about your salary expectations in one of the first interviews, what they are saying is, I don't want to waste my time on somebody who is either too high and I can't pay you, or too low, because if you're too low, I'm going to think you can't do the job. So a lot of times what they'll do if the salary is not listed is they'll say, tell me what salary you're looking for. Now, this could cause a problem if you just give, I'm just gonna, if I'm looking for $100,000 because if it is not within the range, they're going to stop the interview process. Okay, that's not what you want to do. Instead, what you want to do is ask them, so can you, in a nice, curious way, can you tell me what the range is for this job? Now, most of the time they will actually tell you. And many people are surprised at that. They'll say, hold on, hold on. The range is between 95 and 120, and all you have to do at that point is say that's within my range and you can move on. Now, the time to negotiate a salary is at the end after they love you and they offer you the job, because that's when you have the most leverage. But all you're trying to do there is get past it. Now, let's say though, like some interviewers, they say, well, I'm not going to tell you the salary range. What are you looking for? Okay, you got to be prepared for that. Now, I'm expecting as part of your preparation, you have looked at comparable jobs in your area, in your industry, and you found out what the range is. And then what you say is, in my research, I have found the ranges, and make it a broad range. Don't make it 100 to 105. I've found the range for this job is between 95 and 130, and that's the range I'm looking for. Because again, what you're trying to do is just have them go, okay, we're a match. Now, I have had a situation where they told me the salary, and this was me, and the salary was way low, and I said, and there was no chance I was going to take the salary. And I said, and that's why they told me right away, because they knew it was a terrible salary. And I said, I'm a little surprised. Can you help me to understand? Because in my research, the range is X to Y. And they admitted it was a terrible salary. And we ended up stopping the interview at that point. But the point is, you need to be prepared and know the range that you will say yes to and the range that you will give to them. So that's part of your preparation.
Could I
Um,
add
yeah, go
one
ahead.
more thing? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Laura.
please.
So keep in mind the time to negotiate or the time to give the high amount is not during the interview process because they might rule you out and you never get invited to the party. That is, you never get the job offer. So the bottom end of your range might be less than you really want, but it's still doable. That's okay. The goal of the interview process is to get the job offer. Once you have the offer, you know they want you. That's when you have leverage and you can ask for more and you can talk about why you're worth more because you now have a lot more information on what it is they need and why they want you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, here's one. I'm going to shorten it. It's basically somebody saying, I'm 65 years old, and I'm concerned about getting my next job. I de-aged my LinkedIn profile and resume, removing jobs prior to the year 2000, which is awesome. How do I refer to experience and skills not on my resume? So, do you have any suggestions for that, Barbara?
Well, again, a LinkedIn profile cannot be tailored to each job like a resume can. Um, so in the interview, you're focusing in on the skills and experience you have that pertain to this job. And again, if they bring up, well, I see you've had a lot of experience doing these things that we don't need in this job, you could say, yes, I've done those things, but that's not what I love the most. The part that I really enjoy are these things, which, by the way, just so happen to be the same things that are all over their job description.
Mhm. Thank you. How can I truly understand about a company's culture and how the company operates, regardless of the hiring manager? Regardless if the hiring manager is being accurate or trying to fill a position. So now, obviously, what you're trying to do is go to the website, but honestly, the website is not always true. So make sure that you're looking at media, go on Glassdoor. I mean, look for different things. Barbara, do you have something else?
Yeah, look for press releases.
Yeah.
The best thing you could do is search your network for anyone remotely connected to that company and talk to them so that you can get the inside scoop on what the company culture is really like.
Yeah. I've got another one that said, how can I do my best so they like me in the first couple of minutes? So, because really, if they don't like you in the first couple of minutes, like you've shown up late or whatever, then you're going to be fighting against that. But what is, what is a way that you can have likability in the first couple of minutes?
Be real. Be honest, be candid, be yourself, show genuine interest in them. I love that, Laura, you brought up earlier about, why do you like working here and why
Hmm.
the other person just lit up. Whenever I was asked that, I loved it because I thought they're seeing me as a human. I'm not just an interviewer. So when you show genuine interest in them as a person, that's a great avenue toward likability.
Yeah. And I would also add something like very basic smile. And now even so you might say, well, I'm on the phone with the interview because I've done plenty of phone interviews. Smile anyway. It comes through. Even if the person isn't seeing you. So again, think about what would it be like if I worked at this company? And so go in with a positive attitude and they can feel that positive attitude. Now, I know that there are a ton of other questions, and I'm sorry we won't get to all of them. What I want to do is thank Jan for having us here. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate the opportunity. Please connect with us, get our book, let us know what questions you have. So, Jan, let me turn it back to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for an amazing talk today. We really appreciate it and had some amazing questions, and I think it was super useful for everybody. But just to close it out, we have run out of time today. I'd like to thank both you, Barbara, and Laura, for the informative presentation and insightful answers to the many questions. Special thanks to each of you, our audience, for taking the time to attend and participate today. The talk was recorded and will be available online shortly at learning.acm.org. You will also get an email with a link to the recording. You can find announcements on upcoming talks and other ACM activities at learning.acm.org and acm.org. Also, again, please just fill out a quick survey that you'll see in a moment where you can suggest future topics or speakers. And on behalf of ACM, Barbara Limmer, Lauren Browne, and myself, Jan Tymanowski, thanks again for joining us, and I hope you'll join us again.
Thank
This
you.
concludes
Thank
our
you.
presentation. Thank you so much.